Hello, welcome to week two. This week you're going to cover chapter one. So today in this video, we're going to go over some of the important notes from chapter one. We're going to talk about how the content of this course impacts not just what you'll do in your classroom, but how your schools and school districts are organized and select curriculum. And we're going to start by going over what you need to do this week. So number one is to watch this video. So you're here, so far so good. You're going to read chapter one and complete the study guide over chapter one. And you're going to complete your week two assignment. And then you're going to work on adding the chapter one terms to your course glossary. So those terms are qualitative research, quantitative research, and a reminder that sometime throughout the semester, you're going to pick 10 additional terms to add to your glossary. There will be lots of them ripe for the picking in chapter one if you wanted to start tackling those 10. Into chapter one, I posted a PDF of chapter one if you don't have your textbook, just FYI. So the book is arranged like a really good lesson plan. So it gives you that casebook study of a hypothetical situation. Then it's going to give you learning objectives, just like you would have in your lesson or unit plans. Then it's going to present that information. And then it's going to give you some reflection, or there's even some practice multiple choice questions at the end of each chapter. So that way you can kind of make sure, okay, did I understand all four of these objectives at the end? And that'll help you realize if you need to go back and skim some of the text. So the three main topics covered in chapter one is learning and teaching today. So we're going to start with just a general overview of what is real life in the classroom for a student and a teacher. What is good teaching? We all want to be good teachers. So what do we mean when we say good teaching? And then what's the role of educational psychology, both in good teaching and in learning and teaching today? Okay, so let's talk about that first one. And this is information given in your text, and I did update it. The text was a couple years old, so I did update the statistics here. So today our students in our US classrooms are just incredibly diverse and increasingly diverse. Every year our classrooms are more diverse. So in 2021, at the official count day, there were 49.4 million students in public schools. Of that almost 50 million students, 25% were living in immigrant families. 22% were living below the poverty line. Typical Black and Hispanic households are far below the wealth of white households. So there's still some economic disparity among the different groups of students that you'll have in your classrooms. 1 in 6 of our public school students have a developmental disability. You're going to learn a whole lot more about that this semester. And then 20% of our students are living with divorced or separated parents. The other bullet point there is your students are going to have a high level of technological literacy. And even if you're young and tech savvy, you're going to have students in your classroom that know about technology beyond your understanding. Now, not every app or every piece of hardware or software, but there will be things your students know about tech that you don't. So that's a unique challenge. So let's talk about teachers today. So we have 50 million students and we have 3.8 million public school teachers. 80% of our teaching workforce are white, and that statistic has not moved really at all in the last 50 years. So there are tons of efforts out there to make the teaching population match the student population. And they're just not really getting the job done. So there's a whole wing of educational psychology that focuses on how do we get, more diversity in our teaching workforce. 77% of teachers are women, and that's 9 out of 10 in elementary age school classrooms, and then less than 2/3 in high school classrooms. So elementary schools are predominantly female, and then high schools are still have a majority of women teachers. And then in 2021, 51% of teachers had a master's degree or higher. So we have a very educated workforce. So just in average, we boil all those statistics down into what does the single person who epitomizes the average school teacher. They're white, female, age 42. They have an average of 14 years experience. They make a base salary of $61,600 a year. So base salary means before like they got paid for coaching or doing any extra duties. So that's just their take home salary before any extras. And they work 50 hours per week. So do teachers make a difference? I bet a vast majority when asked, why do you want to be a teacher? You might have a lot of different stories that forms that trajectory, but I bet at the heart, most of you want to be a teacher to make a difference. So do teachers make a difference? Well, this chapter is going to give you lots of reasons and lots of evidence to show that teachers make a difference in different aspects of teaching. Make teachers have a large impact on students and learning. Okay, so we're going to watch this video. So this is Taylor Molly, and Mr. Molly was a 5th grade teacher, and he kind of made a segue into writing poetry and then performing poetry, and he was on all sorts of television shows, traveled around the world doing his performance poetry all about being a teacher. So the question on the last screen was, do teachers make a difference? And the answer is yes. So Mr. Molly is going to help us figure out how.
Sunday nights, I lie in bed awake, as all teachers do, and wait for sleep to come, as though sleep were the last student in my class to arrive. My grading is done, my lesson plans are in order, and still sleep wanders the hallways like lower school music. I'm a teacher, this is what I do. Like a builder builds or a sculptor sculpts, a preacher preaches, and a teacher teaches. We are experts in the art of explanation. I know the difference between the questions to answer and the ones to ask. That's an excellent question. What do you think? If 2 boys are fighting, I break it up. But if 2 girls are fighting, I wait until it's over and then I drag what's left to the nurse's office. I'm not your mother, I'm not your father, I'm not your jailer, I'm not your torturer, I'm not your biggest fan in the whole wide world, even though sometimes I act like all of these things. I know you can do these things that I make you do. That's why I make you do them. I'm a teacher, and that's what we do. Once in a restaurant, when the waiter said, "Can I bring you anything else?" And I said, "No, thank you, just the check, please." And he said, "How about a look at the dessert menu?" I knew I had become a teacher when I said, "What did I just say?" Please don't make me repeat myself. In the quiet hours of the dawn, I write my assignment sheets, and then I print them without spell checking them, because I'm a teacher, and teachers don't make spelling mistakes, do we? So as a matter of fact, the new school dress code will affect all members of the 5th, 6th, and 78th grades. And if you need an extension on your essays examining the pubic wars from a hysterical perspective, you may have only until April 300th. I hope that's not a problem for anybody. I like to lecture on love. I like to speak on responsibility. At the drop of a hat, I will talk about honor and integrity and the importance of telling the truth always. And when my students say, "Mr. Molly, are we going to be responsible for this?" I say, "If not you, then who? You think my generation's going to be responsible for this? We're the ones who got you into this mess. Now you are our only hope." And when they say, "What we meant, Mr. Molly, is, are we going to be tested on this?" I say, "Every single day of your lives." Once, while she was digging in her backpack for a pen, I put on the desk of a student a pen, but she didn't see me do it. So when I crossed to the other side of the classroom and she raised her hand, still not seeing the pen that I had put on her desk, and said, "Mr. Molly, do you mind if I borrow a pen from you?" I went, "You already possess everything you require to succeed, including a pen." Whoosh. For a second, she still did not see the pen. that I had put on her desk, but said instead, "Mr. Molly, you are probably the weirdest teacher I have ever had. Could you please just loan me a, oh my God!" You're a miracle worker. How did you do that? And I wanted to say, all I did was give you what I knew you needed before you knew you needed it. So thank you for the compliment, but education is the miracle. I'm just the worker. I'm a teacher, and that's what we do.
So Mr. Molly poses in a very eloquent way a question that your texts will answer for you in chapter 1. So is teaching a science or an art? Now, Mr. Molly sure gives us a lot of clues to the art of teaching. You know, he at the drop of a dime can change courses. He can make a life lesson out of a simple question. He knows which questions to answer and which to ask. But teaching isn't just an art, nor is it just a science. And your text will do a lot to explain that. You have to learn skills to be a good teacher. You have to know what your students can do. You have to know how to tell what your students can do. You have to learn how to get them to the next level, how to teach them the next skill. There's a lot of things to learn, a lot of skills to develop, but during your time here at UFAS and in your studies, but also in your practicals, in your internships, and your student teaching. But you also have to be creative to be a good teacher. There's a lot of art in good teaching. You have to be able to try something new, to take a strategy that hasn't worked and give it another go in a unique way. There's a lot of creativity and art to what good teaching is. So how do you become the miracle worker Mr. Molly so greatly epitomizes? Well, one of them is, and this is on your study guide, is developing teacher self-efficacy. So teacher self-efficacy is just a belief in your own abilities to reach students and help them learn. It's basically a fancy way of saying teacher self-confidence, but it's self-confidence paired with skill. So just thinking you can do it is not the same as believing you can do it and then having the ability to go out there and do it. So part of the research you're going to read about throughout the textbook, throughout this semester, is all the research geared at how do we measure teacher self-efficacy and how do we improve it. Because as you see as the bullet points on your screen, improving teacher self-efficacy improves teaching, it improves student learning, and it improves a teacher's love of what they do on a daily basis. So new teachers. So new teachers, doesn't matter how great your internships were, or if you substitute taught, or your parents were teachers. When you get in there and you're new, you're going to have reality shock. It's not always negative reality shock, but it can still be a shock. You're not totally prepared for it being all your responsibility all day, every day. There's no way to really totally prepare for that before you get in there and do it yourself. New teachers tend to focus on discipline, maintaining order. They tend to focus on getting students to do the work, which is important. They do focus on parents, accommodating differences, evaluating work. Those are all great things a new teacher does. But what a new teacher tends to frame their work is, how am I doing? How am I doing as a teacher? Am I maintaining discipline? Am I motivating students? Am I dealing with parents? Whereas an experienced teacher will reframe that way of thinking to judging their performance by how the students are doing. Are the students enjoying the work? Are they progressing? Are they learning skills to be successful in the next unit or the next grade? Are my dealings with parents helping the students do better? So these are transitions that happen naturally in the career of a teacher. You adapt with experience. You are able to focus on what students need to learn rather than on maintaining discipline and motivation. So judge teaching success by accomplishments of students is where we try to transition a teacher after the first couple years, where you're really figuring it out to becoming highly teacher efficacious. There's a nice word for you, to help students achieve. So educational psychology, what is the role of educational psychology? So we're going to end our discussion today here on that topic. So educational psychology is just a distinct discipline. It's like a subset of psychology. So there's all sorts of branches of psychology. So there is an entire career called an educational psychologist. You can go and get your master's and then your PhD, and you will be a doctor of educational psychology. And you probably work with students and teachers. You probably do a lot of research. So educational psychology really focuses on what you see in red there. It's research focused on and dedicated to the study of teaching and learning processes, child-adolescent development, and motivation. And educational psychology has a very specific goal. The goal of this whole discipline is to improve educational policy and practice. And it's that policy piece we are going to spend some time reading today, and where educational psychology is just super important right now, is in policy. And when we say policy, what we're talking about is law. So two major educational laws have framed education, probably during your lifetime and the lifetime of the students you're going to teach. So when I entered the classroom in 2007, we were under No Child Left Behind. And so you're going to read a little bit about that, but in general, No Child Left Behind indicated that every student and every school should be proficient on every subject matter test by 2014. And so a school had to come up with a plan every year to get more students on those standardized assessments to move into the proficient category. And the push was that you should be able to get 100% of your students to proficient. Okay, you're going to read about some challenges in that new text. Currently, schools operate under the ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act, which was originally passed in 2015 and has been re-ratified several times since then. And so really this more focused on interventions for underperforming schools and students, and by providing equitable services for all students, regardless of what school they attend. And there was more funding for preschool, and then there was more emphasis on data to provide direction for instruction. So here is back to where Ed Psych comes in. So let's look at this big red one. Let's start here. For any program, curriculum, anything to receive federal funding to be implemented in schools, it must be based on, quote, scientific research. So both No Child Left Behind and the Every Student Succeeds Act mandated that if you want to implement something in your school and you want to receive funds for it, you must show it's scientific base, that there's been research, it's been rigorous research, and it proves this is effective. So no school can just say, we're going to implement this new behavior intervention program and we're going to go buy it and we're going to start it next week. There has to be studies done on that program. There has to be papers written on the program, and then the school or the district must prove to the federal Department of Education that they're going to implement something based on scientific research so it can be funded. And where does that scientific research come from? It comes from the realm of educational psychology. Your educational psychologists, your programs, universities run the EdPsych program. They are the largest contributor to these educational programs that are implemented in our schools. So that is why you're in this class, is because every program you teach, every textbook in your class, every learning aid paid for by a federal tax dollar has to be based on scientific research. You need to have at least an understanding of how that research is conducted and where it comes from. All right, so here's the two terms you're going to add to your course glossary, and there's a lot more information on this in your textbook, so please do not only use this slide to complete your course glossary. So there's two main branches of research that are used to conduct scientific research into ed psych matters. And again, and that's how it gets into your schools and your classrooms. So there can be qualitative research, which is about describing events, life experiences. It's a lot of case studies, which you're also going to define in your study guide. And then there's quantitative research. This is data, numbers. We're going to do a correlation study, how many days absent a student was and how did that affect, their GPA or their graduation rate. We're going to find numbers, we're going to compare them, we're going to collect them, we're going to do statistical analysis. So qualitative describes things. It's research used to describe experiences. And then quantitative is data to use numbers to assess, something's effectiveness. And then there's mixed method, which adds a little qualitative, a description, and a little quantitative, and that's the data. So how do teachers, like Mr. Molly said, know what their students need before the students know they need it? Because that is a beautiful way of describing what good teaching is. It's a teacher who can anticipate their students' needs, address the students' needs before they even know they need it. And the answer really is the research done through educational psychology, which is going to filter in not just this course you're taking, but it's going to be woven into your reading course you're taking, your math instruction. There's little elements of ed psych and its research in every class you're going to take in the education program for here on out. And it's going to focus on student personal factors. How does the brain work? How does it make a student motivated? It's going to focus on learning strategies. What actual things can a teacher do in his or her classroom to make the brain learn it and to make the student behave in a way so that the brain can learn it? Ed Psych also does a lot to give teachers in schools and district information about school climate, about the impact of society and family on schools and learning. These are all factors addressed in educational psychology. It helps teachers know what their students need before the students even know they need it. Okay, you guys have a great week. Reach out with any questions, and I look forward to seeing your work.